Idlewild, developed as a fancy name for a resort on Jamaica Bay, had already become the unofficial nickname of New York's booming new airport. Imagine standing on the ramp in the spring of 1968. Kerosene haze in the air, catering trucks rattling past, a whole forest of silver tails shimmering in the sun. The future of air travel looked limitless, so long as the math would add up. But on the airline's balance sheets, the math was groaning under the 60-minute rule. That Federal Aviation Administration regulation decreed, if your plane had only 2 engines, it couldn't fly more than an hour away from a diversion runway. On a map, it drew invisible lines that walled off the Atlantic and turned polar routes into cartographic daydreams. For airlines desperate to surf the post-war travel boom, this was a straitjacket. Yes, 4-engine giants like the Boeing 707 or Douglas DC-8 could leap continents, but their fuel bills threatened to bankrupt routes that weren't London-New York or Tokyo-LA. The public wanted something more flexible. Non-stop flights linking Dallas, Frankfurt, Montreal, Osaka. These city pairs didn't need a 400-seat jumbo jet, but they were far too long for the twin-engine 727s and 737s of the era. The question was hanging in the air like a contrail. Could manufacturers build an aircraft with the reach of a four-holer, but the efficiency of a smaller jet? The industry's first stab at the solution had already arrived. Boeing's 727, with its now famous tail-mounted third engine. It sold nearly 2,000 units. Proof airlines loved the look of extra safety that came with 3 engines, even if the aircraft was designed more for short runways than oceans. But the real prize lay in scaling that up into a widebody, a 250-seat aircraft, cheap enough to buy and fly, yet still ocean-capable. Boeing hesitated, so 2 U.S. rivals stepped forward. Lockheed, desperate for redemption after the Electra debacle, designed an engineering jewel, the L1011 TriStar, complete with a futuristic S-duct sweeping air into its center engine. McDonnell Douglas, hungry to leapfrog Boeing's intercontinental monopoly, sketched the DC-10, straight-lined and pragmatic, with an intake perched atop the fuselage. Both promised the same dream: 3 high-bypass turbofans, twin aisles, 250 to 300 passengers, New York-Paris non-stop. One sleek and quiet, the other rugged and versatile. 2 different answers to the same riddle.
For a while, it worked like magic. The L-1011 debuted with triple redundant hydraulics and the first certified Autoland system, able to touch down in fog so thick ground crews joked they'd need Braille to find the taxiway. The DC-10, meanwhile, proved a cargo lover's dream, a convertible freighter with doors wide enough to swallow race cars and oil rigs. Thanks to that third engine, both families suddenly opened new maps: Orlando to Oslo, Osaka to Cairo. Secondary cities sprouted direct routes like mushrooms after rain. For a glorious decade, the Trijet felt like the Goldilocks solution. Not too big, not too small. Just right. But reality was collecting receipts. Maintaining that tail engine required exotic scaffolding. The S-duct ate into seating rows, and airlines discovered 3 engines meant, surprise, 3 costly overhauls every heavy maintenance cycle. Then the world shifted. The 1973 oil embargo sent fuel prices soaring. Overnight, the brag of cheaper than a jumbo no longer held. And in 1979, disaster struck. American Airlines Flight 191, a DC-10, lost an engine on takeoff from Chicago. Though the root cause was maintenance, not design, public trust in the Trijet evaporated in a single headline. The deeper wound came from regulators themselves. By the mid-1980s, jet engine reliability had pole-vaulted forward, reaching science fiction-like stats: 1 shutdown in 100,000 flight hours. The FAA responded with a new magic word: ETOPS. Twins, if they passed tough new standards, could now fly 2 hours, then 3 hours, from diversion airports. Suddenly, the invisible cage vanished, and with it, the rationale for the Trijet. Airlines did the math quickly. 2 engines burn 25 to 30% less fuel than 3. 2 engines mean 1/3 fewer overhauls. Every kilo saved can be traded for payload and range. A Boeing 777's pair of GE90s could outthrust a Trijet's entire engine suite, while sipping kerosene the DC-10's designers could only dream about. McDonnell Douglas tried a last stand with the MD-11 in the 90s, stretched, winglet-fitted, with promises of range and efficiency. But it underperformed, the orders dried up, and by the 2000s, the Trijet was essentially extinct in passenger service. Yet, calling it a failure is to miss the point. The L-1011 and DC-10 were bridges, temporary, yes, but essential. They proved 4 things every modern twinjet now inherits. Medium-sized widebodies work. You don't always need 400 seats to make a route profitable. Advanced systems matter. Fly-by-wire hydraulics, Autoland. Today's safety baseline began here. Passenger psychology evolves. Once people trusted 3/2 engines, now they trust 2/3. Regulation follows technology. Today's red line becomes tomorrow's museum exhibit. Walk the jet bridge today onto a Boeing 787 at Amsterdam Schiphol, bound for Bali. 2 engines, each capable of carrying the load across the Pacific, ETOPS 370 clearance, cabin altitude dialed down for comfort. That aircraft exists because a generation earlier, the Trijet forced regulators and passengers alike to take the next step. So, when you see a retired TriStar basking in the Mojave sun, its paint chalking to dust, don't call it obsolete. Call it what it is, a mile marker on aviation's learning curve. Proof that compromise can be elegant, temporary, and utterly transformative. Because once upon a time, for a brief but wondrous moment, 3 really was the perfect number.